So there's more and more evidence to suggest that this rumor of this smart connector looking fingerprint reader thing on the back of the iPad Pro may actually be happening. What is this going to be? The reason we got a little bit more information is because we found this case manufacturer leak, which I know case manufacturers can make crazy things sometimes, but most of the time they get to see the AutoCAD files early. That way, when the iPads hit the market, they have plenty of third-party accessories already to support them. And a very similar thing happened in 2017 before the new iPad Pros dropped. Case manufacturers were leaking new cases that showed off the fact that the camera flash would be vertical, the new speaker alignment of the 10.5-inch iPad. So I think that means we have reason to believe if we're starting to see cases that are starting to be adopting this new hole in the back of the iPad that's not the camera, what is it going to be? Well, first line of leaks said that it was going to be some type of new smart connector, but I don't know if people realize this about the smart connector. Sometimes it has to close. Kind of the whole point of that smart keyboard case was that, you could very easily just pop it onto the side of the iPad, you could fold it up, and then it rests flat on the iPad itself. Similar way, smart covers attached in the same way with a magnet. They attach to the side of the iPad so they could close. And on the back of the iPad, I'm not exactly sure how a smart connector is supposed to be very applicable. There was the theory that Apple will be working on a vertical standing keyboard setup, but I actually think that doesn't sound very believable. What sounds more believable is what a lot of other people are saying. Apple has added a fingerprint reader to the back. I know, this is not something Apple normally does, especially not with the iPhone X, because Face ID is the way of the future, Face ID is the way to do it, but maybe things got a little bit more complicated in that, because they wanted to adopt Face ID to the front of the iPad. So since they already had the front-facing camera at that top part of it, they decided that's where Face ID should go, but very quickly realized that Face ID cannot work in horizontal orientations. I'm really unsure why. I feel like that dot projector sends a pretty wide array of dots in any particular direction. Maybe it has something to do with the aiming of the IR blasters. So when you're holding your phone regularly in vertical mode, it's looking at you at like a normal elevation. But I've also noticed with my Galaxy Note 9 that horizontal unlock is not a thing for them either. For one, because this uses iris unlock and your eyes can't, at least face unlock should luckily be a little bit more possible than horizontal iris unlock, in which case, how do your eyes match up with the reader? But even with face unlock in smart detection on the Note 9, using it in this orientation, I can never get it to work, even though it's just using the camera. So maybe it has something to do with the fact that when you're looking at your device like this, you don't have a good angle of yourself within the camera viewfinder, and maybe this problem is expanded and made even worse on something the size of an iPad, because you can imagine when you're holding an iPad at normal orientation, your front-facing camera is pretty much facing your face. But once you flip it over to the side, either your hands may be covering it up, or the sensors are going more to the left of you and not really getting a full accurate read on your face. So I'm no engineer, I don't know exactly how these things work, but I'm really sad to say this might be the actual best case scenario for the next generation iPad. While it would be very weird for Apple to still be releasing devices with Touch ID in 2018, even though this is supposed to be the year of all the new iPhones have Face ID, this is the future, we have budget Face ID, we have premium Face ID and everything in between. For them to still be releasing an iPad that says, okay, it has Face ID, but we understand that it might not work too well if you're using this device in landscape, so we put a fingerprint reader there so that it will act sort of like the home button does with the iPads now. So now when you want to unlock your iPad and it's in vertical, instead of resting your finger on the home button to unlock it, you'll have to reach around and put your finger on the back of the device, which really doesn't seem like Apple. But at the same time, what would seem more like Apple is them just not allowing you to unlock the iPad with biometrics if you want to use it in horizontal, which a lot of people do. Is this the best they could have done though? I don't think so. I think it may have been a lot more expensive, but what the better option could have been, that you in the comments may have been suggesting already, is add a Face ID sensor on two sides of the iPad so that when you're holding the iPad in vertical, you have the same Face ID sensors where they normally would be, but when you want to use your iPad in vertical, use that side bezel that's now the top bezel to store some more Face ID sensors so that when you're holding the iPad in that way, it can unlock doing that. That doesn't sound like it's going to happen because, for one, Face ID sensors are still pretty new to the market. They're very expensive, so putting two sets of Face ID sensors on one iPad may drive the price up to unreasonably high, and they can't afford to sell them at that high a price point, so the Touch ID was the best compromise they they could come up with, because the Face ID sensors, they literally just can't get them at a good enough angle for the average viewing experience when you're using your iPad in vertical. So they just decided, throwing Touch ID on there, I guess it's the best we can do. I almost wish that since these new iPads are supposed to have a certain amount of side bezel, the bezels are not as thin as they are in the iPhone X, because you need room for your fingers to rest and not cover up too much of the display. So I get that, but why not put the fingerprint reader on that little bit of bezel they do have left? Maybe that's really difficult to do. Maybe putting Touch ID that close to a display is rather tricky, but we saw Huawei do it with the P20s. I thought that was rather impressive, that they had a chin and a notch, but they were still able to get front-facing Touch ID. So, I don't know. There's several better ways I think they could have handled the situation. So it's a bit disappointing, yes, but I'm still just very, very much excited to see this iPad redesign that's all about gestures. No more home button, no more physical clicking, and getting an iPad with actual curved corners. There's some concepts on Instagram that look really, really good for how iOS is going to behave on this particular iPad, but all I can imagine is that adding 2 Face ID sensors to the iPad was going to make it too expensive to sell. You don't want to release a new iPad and have it start at $1,000, and they decided that, well, just telling everyone they can't use the iPad in landscape, that's asking for too much, because we even sell products like the Smart Keyboard that encourage users to use the iPad in that orientation. To tell them all that biometrics don't work anymore, that's going too far. So the best case scenario for them financially and for the best of the user was to put a fingerprint reader on the back so that unlocking it is fairly similar to what it was before. Not that it matters to me, because some of you who are new to this channel and were like, Drew, why do your nails look so ugly? Well, I was unboxing the Note 9. I have a skin disease known as psoriasis. My nails are not long, they are just uprooted. My hands are all screwed up, which means Touch ID doesn't work. I wish there was a way I could fix this, but whatever. Touch ID won't work for me anyways, but back when I had an iPad Pro, I couldn't use Touch ID anyway, and that was the only biometric to unlock it. So I basically just had to type in the passcode every time I turn on my iPad. So even if Face ID only works in vertical, that's still an upgrade for me personally. So forgive my bias, but I'm still excited for the new iPad because I'll be able to use some type of face unlock. And man, I gotta say, Face ID is so much more reliable than Smart Unlock is on this thing. You have to hold it so exactly right to get it to unlock. Don't worry, I have video proof. But seriously, I really want to know people out there who are having a fine experience unlocking their Note 9 with face and iris scanning, because for me, it fails like all the time. It's insane. But regardless, something that's kind of interesting about Samsung releasing their 10.5-inch Tab S4 and now with the iPad around the corner is that the Tab S4 only has iris unlock and face unlock. They don't have a fingerprint reader on the Tab S4, yet the iPads, rumors are suggesting now that they're gonna have a fingerprint reader on the back. So now it looks like if you want fingerprint reader and face unlock on a phone, you get the Note 9 because the iPhone X doesn't have that. But if you want face unlock and a fingerprint reader on the back, then you get the iPad and not the Tab S4. So the way that worked out is it's just kind of funny to me. I'm very curious to know if they're going to make the bezels thicker on the 12.9-inch version, or are they going to be changing the displays of the new iPads and keeping the same form factors? Or are they changing the form factors to keep the same screen resolution? I'm not really sure how it's going to go, but either way, I'll definitely be getting this iPad as soon as it's available. And the best thing we have to look forward to is that 2018 is the year of the black bezels. I'm really, really hoping that if the new iPads have Face ID, that means no white bezels on iPads anymore, which will look so much better. And yeah, if the bezels are just as thin on the larger model as they are the smaller model, I'll probably go for the larger one. Now that I don't have a MacBook anymore, I could definitely use a large displayed mobile multitasking iOS device. In case you missed it, I recently sold my iPad Pro in preparation for this new one, so I don't have an iPad right now, and I'm not using my iPhone X, so I'm all over the place with the ecosystem. I'm just kind of out of it right now. Anyway, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on the fingerprint reader on the back of the iPads. All that good stuff, let me know in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.